A common factor in children with autism is an instinct to run or, in some cases, wander away from the safety of family, places that a child or young person on the spectrum should be held safely, such as a nursery, school, or their own home. This no doubt brings a lot of stress and worry to the caregivers of an autistic child, and in some cases traumatic for the child themselves. Your sense of protective responsibility is heightened when you learn that your child is on the spectrum, but sadly and unfortunately, there seems to be a lack of this need in some schools, and it only takes one act of not responding in a way which is required to keep someone on the spectrum of autism safe that can lead to tragedy. This is the story of Avonte Oquendo. At the age of 2.5, Avonte wasn't reaching the milestones his mother believed he should have been reaching, and was shortly diagnosed with autism, leaning to the severe end of the spectrum. When it came to time to enroll in the local elementary school, Avonte was given an IEP, also known as an Individual Education Program, which is given to most special needs children throughout the US. At a 6-to-1 student-teacher ratio, plus one paraprofessional or teaching assistant present, Avonte's mother, Vanessa Fontaine, would accept nothing less than this tight classroom for her son, resisting any change to Avonte's school care, which meant less supervision. Vanessa held her ground. "I would never let them put him in a class with 12 students," she said. "I blocked it." By all accounts, Avonte grew up in a loving home with a family of his mother and 4 older brothers, Jason, Anthony, Andrew, and Javon. Vanessa's marriage to Avonte's father, Daniel, had unfortunately begun to disintegrate before Avonte's birth. As with any other child, Avonte had things he enjoyed doing and interests: shopping for cake and candy at the grocery store, cooking with his mother, and a love for all kinds of music. But his favourite thing to do was run. Also known as elopement, children by nature are curious and enjoy exploring. Other causes for this type of behaviour, specifically in children with ASD, range from anxiety to coming into contact with an uncomfortable sensory stimuli. And of course, any reason for elopement can lead to trauma, injury, and death without the watchful eye of a parent, teacher, or the like. In 2011, Avonte's school consistently called for him to be closely supervised, with a report for the following year stating that Avonte transitions nicely from class to class. He does get excited sometimes and run off. Avonte received medals at school for races when he was younger, and even as he was approaching high school age, breaking off into a run was a constant temptation. Even his favourite game on his iPad was the popular and well-known Temple Run, a game of running without stopping. In September, Avonte started high school at Riverview School in Long Island City. And that October, Vanessa had set a date for the parent-teacher conference, likely to air her concerns. When a form for families to complete was sent home, Vanessa Fontaine wrote explicitly, "Please make sure you keep an eye out. He likes to run, needs one-to-one supervision, will leave the building." An incident where Avonte was bitten by another student would later lead to alarm bells ringing for Vanessa. When she called the high school to find out the what and why that had happened, the school told her that they hadn't looked into that specific student's IEP. Later on, she wondered if the school had failed to go over Avonte's individual education program, because if they missed this with one child, then what's not to say that they missed it with another? Reports released by Richard Condon, the Special Commissioner of Investigation for City Schools, indicated that whilst Avonte's teacher may have told the paraprofessional that Avonte likes to run, this information may not have been passed on to the people responsible for Avonte's care the afternoon he disappeared. On October 4th, Avonte had quietly had lunch by himself, and as the period came to an end, a teacher and 2 paraprofessionals lined up approximately 12 students, one of which was Avonte, to head down 3 flights of stairs to the 2nd floor computer lab. Avonte was towards the end of the group, which was actually small clusters of high schoolers rather than a straight line. By the time the group arrived at the 2nd floor, Avonte had managed to break away. After deciding to leave the line, Avonte was seen on the 1st floor. Security footage shows him coming out of the stairway and directly in front of the security desk, where the school safety agent was seated. A father and daughter were also there, but Avonte was able to walk by and out of the building unchallenged. Security footage shows he jogged down the sidewalk for a few yards upon leaving the school premises, heading towards the park area across the street from Riverview, which happens to be aligned with the East River. This would be the last known sighting of Avonte Oquendo alive, bounding across the street and not looking back. By the time the teacher and the paraprofessionals who had supposed to have been responsible for taking the group to the computer lab noticed Avonte's absence, he had already left the building. He had been gone for 18 minutes before the school assistant principal, Angela Pomo, was notified. The time it took for the information to be passed up the line. A multitude of failures and lack of action lost crucial time in the search for Avonte. Mixed signals and missed opportunities. When Assistant Principal Pomo asked security to search outside the building for Avonte because the person who had been sitting at the security desk, Bernadette Perez, who Avonte had passed on his way out, stated that he had not left the building twice, telling the assistant principal that he had gone upstairs and not out, leading to a search inside the school. Police were not notified of Avonte's disappearance until 1:30 p.m., close to an hour after the fact, followed by Vanessa Fontaine, who hurried to the school along with Avonte's brother, Andrew. Avonte's grandmother had joined Vanessa and Andrew shortly after and spoke to Bernadette Perez, asking, "Why did you let him go?" Perez replied by stating that she didn't know he was special needs. I couldn't find any additional information on this conversation, but her statement seems to contradict what she initially told Assistant Principal Pomo. Whether this was followed up in any way, I wasn't able to clarify, unfortunately, at this time. 2 hours passed. The school tried to coax Avonte out from wherever they believed he was hiding before realizing that he was no longer in the school building. Vanessa got media involvement to escalate the search and to get as many eyes as possible looking for her son, something the school was not in favor of, quoted as saying, "We have to go through different channels before we can get the media here." The NBC and ABC sent reporters right away. They searched the neighborhood all night, the waterfront, the garbage cans, in parks, under cars, and found no trace of Avonte. Donations exceeding $89,000 as an award leading to Avonte's recovery. Everywhere that could have been a possible location of Avonte's whereabouts was searched. The Metropolitan Transport Authority even cut off parts of the 7 and G lines of the train track and suspending track maintenance so that 200 workers could search the tunnels. Avonte was nowhere and all leads led to nowhere. On Thursday, 16th of January, 2014, a photography student walking along the waterfront near Powell's Cove found skeletal remains of a left arm and called the police. The authorities ended up recovering a 5.5 Air Jordan sneaker, followed by 2 legs, jawbone, ribs, and part of a pelvis. The following Tuesday, January 21st, the medical examiner announced that the DNA sadly matched that of Avonte Oquendo. The final report from the examiner detected no evidence of foul play, but the environment which his remains were found in, not to mention that they were only partial, made it incredibly difficult to say the cause of death indefinitely. Publicly, the police have put forward their belief that Avonte likely drowned in the East River. Ultimately, there is very little to go on, and everything remains in the realm of theory as to what really happened to Avonte. Vanessa, Avonte's mother, believes there is more to this story than her son merely falling into the water, drowning in a tragic accident. According to Vanessa, police had checked out College Point months prior to Avonte's discovery. If he wasn't there then, where was he before? Everything is fabricated to me, she said. I don't think they're ever going to say, really, what happened. There's no closure. There's no answers. No one can ever say that something good can come out of a child's death. There's no such thing. But there can be speckles of light in the hope that this never happens to another child. Senator Chuck Schumer and others began advocating for special needs students to wear tracking devices designed to locate children who are prone to wandering or bolting. The bill was signed in 2018, 5 years after Avonte's death. However, Schumer now says that the funding, which was set at $2 million a year up until 2021, is now being amended. And whilst he continues to fight for this much-needed tool, there will always be those who cannot or won't understand how vital a tracker can be to a family of an autistic child. Painfully, Avonte has not been the last child to suffer due to school negligence. Trevyan Rowe of James P.B. Duffy School 12 in the Rochester City School District, New York, disappeared on Thursday, the 8th of March 2018. Trevyan, who was autistic, had rode the bus to school but never entered the building at 999 South Avenue. Instead, he is seen walking away from his school at 7:30 a.m. Family members stated that Trevyan was upset about losing his cell phone and had told his sister that he would kill himself. Outrageously, 3 teachers marked Trevyan as present on the day he wandered from the school. The bus driver nor the 5 members of staff assigned to greet students at the bus stop that morning reported seeing him leave the school grounds, despite this being caught on video surveillance footage. Sadly, Trevyan was found 3 days later, having drowned in the Genesee River. An all too similar case to that of Avonte, which had taken place close to 5 years earlier. Both cases lead to a comprehensible understanding as to why the school system needs to have a tighter monitoring of students on the spectrum and how a tracker has the potential to prevent the deaths of autistic children. Avonte was last seen wearing a grey striped shirt, black jeans and black sneakers. He was 5'3" and weighed in the area of 125 pounds. If you have any information regarding Avonte's disappearance or information of how he came to be found at College Point, I implore you to please contact NYPD's Crime Stoppers on 1-800-577-8477. Alternatively, you can text tips to 274 637 and enter the reference tip 577 or visit www.nypdcrimestoppers.com. Avonte deserved so much better than the sad and inconclusive end he received. His mother Vanessa and Avonte's family deserves answers because what they received, in my opinion, is nowhere close to good enough. Someone knows, someone saw, and someone has information about Avonte's disappearance and possibly whatever led up to his death. If you have been affected and or have a child with autism, please visit one of the resource websites listed in the description box for advice on how to keep autistic children safe. Also, if you'd like to read the NYMag piece from which this video is written, you can find it linked down in the description box below. Rest in peace, Avonte and Trevyan.